Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, I hope you're having a good day. This is the Win with Dice podcast. Podcast all about tabletop RPGs, running them, playing them. Calvin and I share stories from the various games we play in and we run, just so you can maybe jump into the hobby if you've never played, or maybe if you're a player, maybe see on the other side of the screen. It's it's not so mysterious, and you can get the maybe the little push you need to actually take the step and become your table's GM.
Yeah.
So that's basically the show.
As you can see, our intro has improved. I was watching some of our old episodes, just realizing how much better we've gotten at this. Although we still do a lot of flim-flam, which I do like to do as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's like most of the show is flim-flam. a little bit of advice, and mostly just a bunch of laughing and jokes.
Yeah, a lot of that. So that's basically what we got for you today. I have a recap of a session that I've run that I can get into. Going back to my Crown of Dragons campaign, which is basically me dragging my players all throughout my homebrew world so I can fill it in. Some controversial topics we saw on Twitter. We have time to get to that. And we'll see if we can fill out a whole episode with that. And then maybe a third thing if we don't.
Yeah, I think the term controversial thing on Twitter is kind of redundant these days.
Yeah, not wrong. So before we get into that, we have to get into the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week.
Ah, yes, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, brought to you by Ramon, I think, this week.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, actually, let's just I'm just gonna dive into my IRL life, and I met a friend last night for the first time. We were having dinner with a couple that one of them I went to high school with, the other person apparently I did go to high school with, but I've never spoken to before. But now they're dating, and now they're our friends. Anyway, that's the backstory for context. But I was just kind of talking, and they're the guy, he's played a little bit of tabletop RPGs before, and he's maybe gotten 5 sessions underneath his belt in various occasions, and I was just kind of speaking to him a little bit, and I was like, man, there's probably a million people out there who are just man, I wish I had a solid gaming group of friends so I can play this stupid game and not have things fall apart after one session or something like that. Right? And I think that if you ever run into, this is an advice for people who play regularly and you meet somebody who's wanting to play, definitely my tip of the week is to just invite them to your table. Try to get them in, try to fit them in, because it's hard out there actually to find a good group of people to play with. And you might feel as a DM, I know I am, where you have a million games on the go. Calvin definitely has a couple of games on the go.
Too many.
But I think you always gotta squeeze out a little bit more space around your table for that person who just wants to get a couple games in, wants to join in on the fun. And and if they have any inkling to GM, just give them the little boost to be yeah, man, let's do this. Let me grab some people and let me put something together. And you can run the campaign you've been working on for a while, right? Because it's always the fear, right? It's I'll do this one day, but as soon as you put a date on the calendar, then it's real.
Yeah.
And I'm a little pushy. I'm I'll bully you into doing it.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. You want to make space for people to if you have the time, if you have the room. That's kind of my thing. Is I want to get more people playing. So I'm always well, which campaign can I put a person into? Where do I have room for a new person? Or should I just do a one-on-one thing? Because I love playing with people, and especially I like seeing new DMs play and playing in their games, because they're always going to do something unique and different. There's always going to be a different feel to every person's game.
Yeah. for sure. And like the more and like that's the thing too, right? So like the more people you have DM for you and the more games that you experience. I know that there's the trope of like the forever DM, right? I think that like, I mean, obviously someone's really good at it and really wants to do it, like let more power to you, right? If you're that person's player and like, you know, you're like, yes, I will always love to play in like that person's game. That's great, you know. But I think there's like something to be said to just experiencing how other people do things, right? Like, you know, just experiencing somebody else's GMing style, and you might like pick something up or like say like, oh, I see what you did there. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna learn from that. And like, the more people, you know, the more things you can experience from other people will definitely make your game better and your whole experience in the hobby better. So just like, you know, I'm always a big fan of like building up a community around you, around your hobby, and like, you know, the best way is to just force people into playing games with you, right? So, you know, don't feel like you're pushy. They definitely want you to. Like, don't even. Yeah,
most people just need like a little nudge. Plus, the more GMs you have around you, the less games you have to run yourself.
Yeah, right. And it's always it's fun to be a GM, but it's also kind of fun to be the player because it's just less work.
Like, yeah, I only have to think about one character.
Yeah, right. It's like I can just don't know anything about the plot and be surprised. Like, you know, only one voice, lol. Like,
right?
Easy.
Only one name.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So yeah, that's the GM tip of the week. Be pushy and get your friends who are like kind of interested into the game. Just do it. Just tell them we're hanging out Saturday and we're gonna play a game, or like we're hanging out Saturday and you're gonna run a game. Right? Just put that day on the calendar and get them involved as soon as possible.
Yeah. Just give them that little push.
Yeah. And yeah, so there you go. That's your Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, folks. Pretty straightforward, where you just peer pressure your friends into playing games. That's the tip, really.
Peer pressure always useful.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but yeah, I just want to put one more point. Sorry, Calvin, before I cut you off.
Oh no,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
Like, yeah, I was saying like, you know, if you are a GM with like lots of people who want to play with you, again, West Marches is like a good style of game that you can just have in the back burner to get new people in. My Neon game is my West Marches game, and more than likely this friend will be probably his first session with me will be in my Neon setting, just because it's just easy to get random people together and like not have it impact my story so crazily, right? Because that's the issue. It's just like introducing a new character randomly could throw the whole dynamic off for your plot. But having a safe place where it's just like, oh yeah, like, you know, just here's like a dungeon, right? You could go mess around with it. And even if like everybody dies or, you know, you stomp through the boss, it doesn't really impact the story too much. So, you know, having one of those places just like in the back burner is kind of cool. I mean, I think Calvin, your game is basically just a really extended West Marches game.
Sort of. I mean, because everything's in the same campaign world, vaguely, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, like everything's like it's just temporal. There might be some temporal differences, but everybody's kind of visiting the same places, and because it's so big, you can just plop them down at one end and tell them to go to the other side, and that'll be like a whole year worth of bullshit.
Yeah, kind right? of. It does work for like that emergent storytelling. Because then I'll have notes on something that one party has gone through, so I had to make something up for them, and then someone else comes there and it's like, okay, well now I have something ready for them already.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, you know, it's just easy. Like, you know, Inia and I already have like all the NPCs figured out and the plot already figured out, and it's good because they can just go do something else that the main party hasn't done anything, and maybe they can meet up eventually, right? But yeah, there you go. That's a little extra plus on that one. But let's get into it, Calvin. I'm excited.
Double tip this week.
The Draco Coronum, the Crown of Dragons, one of my favorite campaigns that you're running that I'm not playing in. I'm not at all jealous. But
I mean, they're closing in, but they have more distractions to deal with. So yes, the Crown of Dragons campaign, where the players are questing for the mythical Dracoronum, a crown that can supposedly control all the dragons within the realm. Thus far, the players do have sort of an idea of where to go to get the next piece of this thing. But along the way, one of the players who's playing a witch who is sort of tied to this otherworldly powerful entity that gives them their magical powers, they were requested, or their presence was demanded, let's say, by their patron at a certain location before the end of the year. So the last few sessions were sort of the players on their way to that, and then various things happening that slowed them down. Some certain things involving a wyvern that they had to take some revenge on, passing through a big city, being pursued for a bit, helping out another character's old hometown, the fighter character, finding out he was apparently the small one in the family. Actually, no, not true, because his sister was shorter than him, but had a halberd. Anyways, it was the whole thing. So they passed through that. They just went to the capital city, where they also caught up with some backstory for another character, one who was a member of a bard who was a member of a band some decades ago, but ran afoul of some magical people, was mostly due to being punished for embarrassing or harassing a certain noble. He ended up being like preserved within a key for several decades and only revived recently because he was apparently supposed to be useful in recovering the Dracoronum. So the previous session, they ended up going to his old apartment, where they discovered that most of his items were looted, including a very important loot, L-U-T-E, that he used to have, and now seems to be in the possession of one of his previous bandmates. However, they decided to put that on the back burner for now, and were intending to deal with other things. So first off, while they were in the big city, they had come across a bandit camp some time ago, and within that camp they found a crate that was a totally original candy. It came from a candy factory owned by Carlisle Crackle. No relation to any other alliterative named candy manufacturers.
Of course, right?
So they were basically like, they discovered that one of because it's like these candy sticks, and they discovered that one of them, if you do a certain magical phrase or you like touch it in a certain way, it'll turn into a snake, like a living snake. So they were intending to bring this back and figure out like what the heck is going on. And also if there was meant to be some sort of contest to find this specific magical stick and maybe get a tour of the factory of some sort. I don't know where they got that idea from.
I just don't know why a snake was involved. That's what I want to know.
Because I saw a really cool item and I was like, oh, I want to use this. Oh, now I need to figure out an entire reason that this would be made.
So if it is a contest, then like, was it some kid's gonna lick the lollipop, all of a sudden a snake's gonna bite its tongue? Like, and then you're like, you win! Congratulations.
Well, it seems like that wasn't the original intention for it. But they had to talk to the man himself.
Yeah, okay.
So they arrived at the Crackle factory. There were some workers going in and out. There was a half-orc guard at the front. They tried to sweet-talk their way in. They revealed that they had this stolen crate. And the guard allowed them entry after seeming to, like, mystically talk to someone, although they weren't able to hear what was going on. So inside, they kind of expected some sort of like short gnomish workforce for some reason who might also be singing. I don't know where they get these ideas from.
This is a legitimate factory, okay?
This is a place of business. There were, in fact, a significant number of gnomish staff, but they seem to be the managers, actually. The ones in charge. Not just the workforce, who also has to control, I don't know, the rides and whatever else is in there. So they were guided to this meeting room, and then they were there for a lengthy period of time that just seemed to continue to draw out. They started to like look around the room, kind of their adventurer trap senses were tingling. Looking to the roof of the room, they could see that it was full of like holes, like a pattern of different holes above them. And then after about 15 minutes, the holes began to drip with this thick black ooze, which sort of started to fall into the room. And then Carlisle Crackle himself came on over like a magic intercom. And he accused the party of being thieves who were trying to steal from him after they bought this box back. And he wasn't very certain about it. They argued very well. I mean, he kind of jumped to a conclusion, but they argued that why would they bring the box back if they were the ones who stole it? I mean, he assumed they were just trying to ransom it or something. There was a bit of a back and forth. I was fully prepared to drop a black ooze on them, but in fairness, they did make a good point. So Carlisle, he talked to someone off screen, and I was kind of channeling that one character from Legend of Korra, Varric. I was kind of channeling that sort of wacky energy he had. So of course he had this ever tired assistant that he would yell to off screen.
Yeah.
So eventually they were able to meet the man himself, Carlisle Crackle, this gnomish figure with a garish-looking suit, a very tall top hat, carrying a staff with a magical gem on the end. Again, totally original, not inspired by anything. Just sort of poofed into my head one day.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then he had his assistant, Birdie, who I would occasionally... So, because we're playing online, we started using the webcams for some reason. So I was able to, they could actually see me, yelling towards a direction off screen, which is sort of the energy I wanted to channel with this guy. I just wanted to make it clear that, this person he's yelling at is, ever present, always there, but just never close to the action.
Nice.
So it became clear that there was sort of a contest intended for someone to find this particular magical stick, but it was meant to just be a little bit of a magical poof firework display kind of thing, not turning into a whole snake. So once Carlisle realized there was something wrong, he wanted to apologize, he wanted to reward the players, and one of them gave him the idea that maybe the winner should get a tour instead. And Carlisle, he also mentioned that he was planning on retiring soon, but he couldn't find someone to take over his place, so there was some suggestion.
Calvin, stop.
That maybe
Just stop.
whoever came in could possibly take over the factory. The players, of course, were all given, entry to this tour, but it had to be set up. They have to figure out, because of course, the factory's not made for having wacky tours.
No, of course not, because it's a legitimate business.
Yeah, again, but they're definitely going to do it. He was yelling at Birdie off screen to come up with some ideas. There was a suggestion of a great glass elevator, but elevators aren't a thing. Although, a great glass levitating disc could work. And a magic waterfall, maybe. So,
oh, yeah.
So, apparently, they're gonna come back, and I gotta have a Willy Wonka dungeon whenever they come back to this place.
That sounds pretty funny.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be the silliest thing I've done. To be honest, this whole thing kind of spun out of I saw a really cool item and I just needed a reason for it to be there. So I was like, okay, made by this person, and they'll find a thing, and I don't know what they'll do with it. And then it was just oh yeah, what if we can get a tour of the place, and what if he's basically Willy Wonka? And I was like, yeah, that's what he always was. This was the entire plan the whole time.
Nice. Yeah, I thought it was something a little bit more nefarious, but apparently it was just kind of a mishap. What it sounds like.
Kind of. There's some things that are I have ideas, but then the players will say and do things, and then it's this is so much better than what I was coming up with. So let me see what I can do with that, and then build it in here, and then improve on it in my own way.
Oh yeah, man, I totally love taking ideas from the players, just listening to what they're saying and then just making it happen, because it's fun. I mean, it could show that, I mean, we're revealing the stuff behind the screen, right? We're you're coming behind the curtains and seeing how the whole thing works, but if you're basically just giving the people what they want, right? And if you listen to your players and use those ideas, like the players will feel really good because they're like, oh man, that's so cool. They get exactly what they want and they feel smart about it, and you get to look good. It's like
partially.
It's like,
I mean, at the same time, it's like, how would I put this? Because like, you give them what they want or what they're looking for, but you can also change it up in certain ways. So like, I don't mind if people know that this wasn't what I had planned for Carlisle Crackle, who was just sort of like a one-off name. Because now I can come, like, when they come back to this, now I can come back with like, well, here's what you've given him, here's ideas that you've put in his head, here's what he's made from that, and who knows what'll happen when they return. Who knows who will be there at this point, because who knows who will win that contest.
Yeah, right. And you could just like have a whole thing like spit out of like the like a chocolate, like a whole candy factory dungeon where it's just like weird like rooms, and it's just like this weird escape room kind of deal where like I don't know what's going on, and then it's like, oh, you get to play this fun game where like there's all these chocolate guards and they're going to beat you up, and you're like, oh cool, I get to fight them, but you also just give them the option just to eat a bunch of chocolate or something like that, because it's like weird and magical and chocolate. It'd be pretty fun. And you get to just, take like there's so many cool things I could think about.
Yeah.
It's like sky's the limit. So it's like really good fertile ground to do something kind of wacky.
Exactly.
And, wackiness is always fun, man. Wackiness is always fun, I think.
Yeah, this is where I can go and like I can just put any sort of really cool creative monster concept that I have. Yeah, I'm excited to do some stuff with that.
Yeah, cool, man.
So yeah, they settled that. Carlisle allowed them to take half of the candy crate that they found, so they still have like 30 or so candies left, which is good for them. I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but I'm excited to find out.
I'm just gonna start giving it to random people.
So yeah, they settled down at the inn. They did stop at a magic store for a bit, where I had a brief encounter where someone was trying to get like a discount on some stuff. So I had them roll a diplomacy check. They got a crit. So the shop owner, I think it was the druid who was doing it. So the shop owner suddenly took notice of their pet, their shocker lizard. And then they were like, yeah, I'll give you a discount on anything here if you let me take a sample from your shocker lizard. So there is a random shop owner at the Stone Dragon Magic Store who has a sample from their shocker lizard. I don't know what they're going to do with it yet.
Probably mass-produced shocker lizards.
Sure. Who knows?
Everyone, in like a year when everybody comes back, everyone just has one. It's like the new fad pet in town. Pet.
They're carrying shocker lizards in their purses.
Yeah, right. and then another year later, where everyone just like they're like, oh man, shocker lizards. The shocker lizard population in the city has gone too high. And it's just like there's just like packs of shocker lizards roaming the street because it got out of hand.
Maybe if I do a really big time skip.
Oh man, it'd be so funny if like just shocker lizards just took over the ecosystem, and it's just like, oh shit, they're invasive.
Yeah, I guess it would be, because that's not really a region that they're from. At least where they are right now, it's not the right climate for them. But
yeah, it'd be really funny, and then you could just have like shocker lizards randomly show up every time someone goes in that place. It's just like,
yeah, like they wouldn't have a predator around there.
Instead of the city having a rat problem, it's just like a shocker lizard problem. So anytime someone goes to the sewers or something, it's just full of shocker lizards instead of rats.
Oh my god, because they would just shock anyone who steps in the water.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this town is gonna have some problems.
Too funny.
So yeah, that was sort of the majority of their day, and then they settled down for rest. And then the witch, who I've been messing with in their dreams because I don't know why I'm really enjoying doing that. They had a mysterious dream, which I guess I can talk about because they kind of told the rest of the party about it. So the player of this witch, they've been receiving dreams of the location where they're supposed to meet their patron, but they received another one that night. Since there were only about this is like the last stop in their journey before they get to the town itself, where they're meant to go. So they were having sort of one last important dream, wherein they were at this meeting place again. They were there with their fox familiar, but there were also several other animals there, including a cat, a hawk, an owl, a shark that was in sort of like a nearby river, and a lizard that was lying sort of completely still, which is sort of a plot thing that I'm setting up. They haven't figured out yet, so I'm not going to explain it here.
Interesting.
However, one of those things would come up rather soon, because as they were leaving the next day, they have their own carts and everything, so they were about to make their journey, but there was a carriage that was also leaving to go towards the same place, and it was going to keep going, because where they are, basically you head south a bit, there's a couple more towns and then the coasts, so this carriage, caravan, whatever, was going to go all the way to the coast, so there were some people riding on it, and they were going to stop in this small town, where the witch was from. So the cart drivers, or at least one of them, sort of asked the party if they wanted to travel together, because the forest they're going through is known to be occasionally dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where they met a whole bunch of new people. So there were the two cart drivers, this nervous human one, Tilbert, and then an older human, Wicta, who was just sort of unenthused by everything, just rather focused on her job, or just could be uninterested. One who was sort of like a knight, in very clean looking armor, Wald. One dwarven fisherman with a bunch of equipment named Thakal, who was very chatty and very annoying. And lastly, there was another human, this woman with like a wide brim hat and dark glasses on, by the name of Myrtle, who had a white cat around her, one that the player immediately recognized from her dream.
Oh, fellow patron, I guess, right?
Maybe. So Tilbert, he asked the party if they would join the caravan so they could protect each other through the Burless Woodlands, is what I called them.
The Burless?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know? It's a forest. Yes.
I don't want to name all my forests the same thing, but I did need like a foresty region, and Burless sounded like a good name. One that I totally came up with and was not generated by any sort of generator.
Obviously, straight from the dome, right? Like.
Yeah, names are hard. Like, I can figure out a description of the place. I know the sort of mood I want it to be and what dangers might be there, but I can't think of names for things.
Oh yeah, totally. And like names of places, like I think it's fine, because like the reasons why we name places might just be because like 1,000 years ago they called it something else and they shortened the name like 1 billion times, right? So like who knows why it's called Burless Forest? Everyone just calls it that, and that's the way it's always been, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it does give me opportunities to be like, is Burless a person, or is it a derivative of some other words? And like those generators, like as much as I joke about them, they will give me ideas. Like one place was like Jane's Den, so I was like, well, who's Jane? Is that a family name? What's their history? Why do they have a whole town named after them, etc., etc.?
Yeah, for sure. And like you could even say like it's not even in common or whatever, right? It could just be like another language, and you're just like, that's just what they called it, man.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
If the party
definitely.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, if the party was more familiar with Gnomish, then they might have some ideas.
Yeah, right. Definitely real world analogs to places where they're just named things from different languages, and that's fine.
Yeah. So they're going through these woodlands, and they stop to talk with Myrtle, who was, generally affable and polite. They asked her several questions about Myrtle and about her cat, trying to get some sort of idea on what their relationship was. Towards the end of the day, after they started their travel, the druid stopped to use the speak with animal spells to talk with the cat, which is something I keep forgetting they have.
Nice.
So the cat had to be because the cat was like completely loyal to Myrtle, obviously, but still very interested in talking to this person because they never really talked to like a. I think they used the phrase like two legs or something like that. I don't remember what they said exactly.
You two legs.
So the cat was like super interested in what was going on, but at the same time, I didn't want to reveal too much.
Mm-hmm.
So they traveled, they settled down, they started going the next day. The next day, so a couple of things happened. One, they saw an elemental within the forest that looked like it was sort of like stuck where it was, but they decided to give it some space and leave it alone.
Yeah.
But what was more interesting was that the dwarf Thakal was looking mighty sick. He looked a bit drained and fatigued. Certainly not as chatty as he was like the entire day before.
Interesting.
Through some study between all of them and their experience, they were able to figure out that it was something similar to a nightmare spell that had some sort of effect on him.
Ooh, seems like there's witchery afoot.
Oh yeah. So they had a very lengthy conversation with Myrtle, who was very quickly revealed that she had gotten a pretty good read on pretty much everyone. Like she could tell like what their strengths were, obviously by what they were wearing, what equipment they were carrying. She could tell by the expression, certainly on the fighter and the druid, that they had many losses recently, or like had some losses in their pasts at least.
Right.
The fighter, we had talked about a few episodes ago, how they used to be a squire, and the person they were squiring for had died. The druid is like the only original party member left, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got Myrtle apparently had a read on everyone. But she wasn't entirely sure about the witch herself or her full scope of her abilities, but certainly knew that the fox was unique. So they were all suspicious of Myrtle at this point. They certainly all intended to keep an eye on her, which was probably a good idea, because the next day, Thakal was looking much worse. He was a little bit more jittery, a little nervous looking. And Myrtle was sort of deep in conversation with the other human on the cart, Wald, the one guy in that big bulky armor. So it came down to the fourth day, which was like they wouldn't have been able, like if the journey had been a bit better, they might have been able to reach by that day. But just with the pace of everything, they weren't able to reach that day. However, the call was now looking incredibly pale.
Oh no!
Like as the cart and everything was getting ready to leave, the call wasn't there, so the party went to check on him and saw him just like lying in his tent, looking very pale. They did find bite marks on his neck that looked like they came from the cat.
Oh, I thought it was a vampire, but I was like, okay, cool, the cat. I was like, there's a vampire?
That was certainly their first guess too.
In Burles Forest? Oh man. Well, better get the sticks out, boys. But no, okay, it's just a cat.
Yeah. So the party, they decided they wanted to take the call with them in their cart because they could travel faster than the caravan. And there was like a major argument back and forth. Wicta, the other cart driver, didn't want them to do that because she didn't see it was necessary. The one guy, Tilbert, just wanted to get moving. Wald immediately took Myrtle's side when the party accused her, and then there was like all this yelling back and forth, and Myrtle was just sitting there calmly and quietly stroking her cat.
She's definitely like she's like, yes, all according to plan.
So
nice.
Eventually, Wicta relented. The party took the call and started moving on to the town themselves. The town of Greydrift, which is sort of exactly what it says on the tin. So they went on their own and they arrived in this town. And again, it's like this small town. It's sort of one of those places kind of... it's in the middle of this forest, but it's a place that people just pass through on the way to more important locations nearby. Because it's like vaguely near the capital city, but also there's other major locations like coastal towns and other places nearby it that people will just head to instead. It's like this small, forgettable place. There is some businesses there. There is some places of interest there. that the party can sort of like look into. But it's mostly I mean, if a patron is calling a witch to this place, you can probably sort of guess the tone of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they arrive there. Again, the witch, she knew of, because she used to live here, so she knew of some people who could help. They went to a certain doctor who gossiped about other arrivals in town, mentioning that there were a couple of people who had arrived in a nearby inn. So they left the dwarf there, and they headed to this inn, run by, it's called Wood's Inn, just run by a halfling named Wood.
Cool.
They chatted with them a bit, and Wood revealed that there were only a couple rooms left because several of them had been reserved. So far, only 2 were in use, and the other one was reserved for someone who was supposed to be arriving very soon.
Ooh, okay.
I think they did know, according to my notes, and I hope I remember this correctly, they did find out the names of the people who would be staying there, so they did discover that Myrtle was one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to check on the other rooms just to see who was there and be nosy. They knocked on the first one, on room number 1. This pale-looking elven woman opened the door, wasn't very chatty, but the party quickly moved on. And then they knocked on door 3, and who opened the door was... So, I probably gotta explain some things. This is going to tie back to something that happened many, many sessions ago. Before the party was... They were on a journey, they needed a boat, they stopped in a coastal city. But while there, they discovered a nearby orphanage had been taken over by a hag.
Oh my god.
And while sort of dealing with this and trying to figure out what was going on, they ran into the hag's sister. This very tall, elegant-looking woman with an extremely wide-brimmed hat who, at the time, was basically based on Lady Dimitrescu from the most recent Resident Evil. But maybe they did discover that this person was a hag in disguise. So when they knocked on the door to room 3, it was this hag that stepped out in her full human disguise. This extremely tall woman who had to like duck to exit the door.
Oh shit.
And it seems, given the fact that they arrived recently, they're all there for who knows what.
Mm-hmm. Some sort of witch convention.
Maybe. Who knows? That is where we had to end the session, so who knows why they're there.
Oh my god, the hag's here? Wow. Okay, cool. I'm excited. They're probably excited too.
With Myrtle still on the way to town.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. The plot's thickening. I like it. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about this one because it was mostly the journey. But yeah, I had a lot of fun setting up Myrtle. Because again, these are characters who I've had around for a bit. And then just like certain things really came together so I could tie certain things together. And I was like, yeah, I just had some really interesting opportunities of things to work with that I don't want to talk too much about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's going to be very clear that all the characters involved in this are like ripoffs of the Resident Evil bosses. I was trying to do an accent for Myrtle because I was basing her on that metal controlling guy.
Oh man, that's so funny. That you're just like, yes, now we're playing Resident Evil now.
Because that's how long ago like all this was coming together for me. So.
Nice, cool. So I mean, I guess yeah, but there's this weird witch convention happening, whatever that means.
Who knows?
And the party still hasn't gotten all of the Dracocoronum yet. Not even one.
Nope.
So like, not even one Coronum or the Draco.
They're close. They're close. They do know where, because the thing itself, the whole Dracocoronum, it's like the crown with several dragon stones to put in it. They know where the blue one is, and they're not too far away from it. But they also discovered, like, they have to do some backtracking I know it was a frustrating plot point to throw at them, but it's also like, I mean, that's where it is. I'm sorry.
I could put this here like when before we started. It was right there. Like
I could put it in front of you, but that's not where it is.
That's not the fun I have.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm debating on how I might change up some things like with pacing as we get into that. But I like the pace of the campaign. I just worry it's too slow for the concept. But at the same time, I don't want to change either. So I don't know. Something's gonna have to give at some point. But I like where we're at now. I'm glad we get to
that's
do
true.
things.
I mean, like you could also just say like as soon as they get one, maybe I'm sure there's some sort of counterforce out there working against the party because these things are major artifacts, right? And there's never really just one group looking for it. So I mean, maybe as soon as they get one, the other party gets one, and then instead of it being collect 5, it's like collect 3 and beat up the other guys, kind of deal.
Maybe.
You know, that's probably what the bad guys' plan is. Is like, we'll just make them do the work and then kick their ass and take it. You know,
good luck to those bad guys.
I know. Listen, man, they defeated Kai Vanth Reborn or whatever, or Empowered. Like,
oh man, what was he called? Kai Vanth Ascendant or something like that. Something ridiculous.
Kai Vanth Ascendant. I just keep thinking about like, you know, like you have like the boss intro in a video game and it's like the cutscene and then like the name comes up and it's like
that is what I was going for.
And it just keeps changing slightly every time. Like it's so good. I love it so much.
Yeah, I am trying to like tie some plot things together. I'm trying to reduce the number of plot threads. This is maybe part of it.
I mean, I think it's pretty cool, man. I mean, I'm glad that you're you're able to utilize stuff that you've thought of, like, you know, near the beginning of your campaign and kind of pulling things back together, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I know that my NPCs don't exist until they need to, so it's like, I'm always like hard pressed to like, you know, have NPCs kind of just chilling in the back. And just like, you know, have those ideas. I think that once I have an idea, the NPCs show up. But like, you know, it's like, but if the party's never gonna get there for like a couple sessions, I will not think about it like at all.
I don't know if I could do that. I get nervous about like if it's something important. I feel like I need it.
I mean, to be fair, it's like the concept. Like I know that like this person needs to exist. Like the recent session I ran with in the pirate game, you know, with all the hags, right? All I knew is that like I needed a bunch of hags, one leader hag, and then everyone invented like one hag to betray everybody else, right? And I was like, that's it. I just knew those people needed to exist, and then it all just kind of came up, and I was like, okay, I'll just start naming them random stuff. and then giving them like really loose identities.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah. They only existed for about 4 hours, I think. So you know,
for like one session before we came through.
And you like stomped them all out. Although a couple of them got away. And now you guys have Angie on your team, you know, so, you know, Angie gets to have a little bit more backstory and probably Gretchen too. I think that's what I named the Green Hag, Gretchen, because, you know, G for green, G for Gretchen.
Yeah.
I still think that's still one of my favorite games I've ever ran because of I get to name the things like shoe and sock. And, you know, really dumb names because they're hags and they're dumb.
Yeah, I don't know if these hags are that wacky, but
I mean,
some of them might be.
Hags could always be wacky, man. You should have one wacky person that nobody likes, like
bare minimum.
Everyone's being serious. This person's just like, look at me, I'm a clown. Like,
Yeah, I'm excited to get to this. It's been there. It's been one of those things that's been sort of like ever present, hanging over the game for a while.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it'll play out. I don't know how much time they'll spend on it. I don't know how much they'll care about any of it. I never do until it happens. I don't know what's going to be the cool thing and what's going to be the random thing I didn't think of, but it's an interesting plot thread that I want to follow further.
Yeah, for sure.
That's sort of...
I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to hear about it because, again, this is one of my favorite campaigns that I'm not playing in.
Yeah, no, this session was definitely a whole lot of like, I didn't think of this, but it's cool, so let's see where it goes. And I thought of this a while ago, so let's see if it plays out. And there's still some things that like I'm kicking myself because I wish I had like mentioned certain things or revealed certain things that I got to find some way to work back in. But at the same time, like it was still pretty fun.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right, so let's talk some controversy.
The good old Twitter's always good for something, right?
So, yeah. So it comes from a tweet. I think Tim actually had sent this to me originally. Then it was sort of still in my mind, so I kind of wanted to talk about it a bit, just because of some of the reaction to it. It's a post from it's a Twitter post of a Reddit post from the RD&D Reddit. And I'll just read this out, and I'll try to avoid naming like any usernames or anything. Just because I don't want to seem like I'm calling out people specifically, but more sort of like certain mindsets and things like that. But it was this person asking if they were punished for role-playing. And the story as they posted it was, the party got captured by a mob boss and his bandit dudes. We're all tied up on our knees. Mob boss says we're being taken to some cells, maybe get ransomed or interrogated. My character spits at him when he finishes his monologue. DM tells me that he orders his men to kill me while I'm prone and tied up. I'm restrained and prone. They roll a few attacks with swords, hit me unconscious, then a few more times while I'm down, killing my character. DM says the mob boss doesn't like being disrespected. We were all level 3, and it was the first major fight that resulted in us getting captured. Guess I'll make a new character? DM says it's too bad because she liked my character and asked if she wants to let the party find a cleric to revive me. Well, then why did you kill my character? And then an edit to the post, which is, this is my first time playing D&D, and this was our first session. The point of this post was to gauge whether this was normal and a thing to expect moving forward because it surprised me. And I hadn't gone through the trouble of finding the original post, so I don't know if there was more follow-up than that. So all the context I have is just really in that specific paragraph.
Right.
So I was kind of wondering, I guess we could discuss the situation itself first, because looking at the discussion of it, it sort of devolved into like, well, you should have known this would happen. That seems like an obvious consequence of spitting in the face of a mob boss. But other people were saying, but clearly the player wasn't aware of like, this is the kind of tone and the kind of game that the DM was reaching for, and the DM should have made that clearer. And then there was certainly much more discussion of like the concept of, is D&D a role-playing like story game, or is it a numbers combat game? So I guess we could start maybe with the post itself, if you want to cover that, and then go into the discussion about the discussion on it, because it got pretty heated, like most D&D things do.
Yeah. I think like anything, once you're, it's your hobby, right? It's one of those things you think about often, so people have lots of very specific opinions on it. But this is classic. I don't know how experienced the DM is, but this is like a classic, like first time DM kind of things where like, oh shit, I beat up the party, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh damn, that was a little bit too hard. You know what I mean? Or maybe it was planned, but I can totally see this as being like, whoops, well, they're all captured. Yeah. And this mob boss is bad. It's bad. I don't make assumptions, but, it's very, very hard to have the party be in a situation where they're not heroes or, not in control, right? They had no way out but to let the story play out. And it's like, it's so hard to navigate those situations because arguably, like, we as DMs train players to be like assertive and try to make the situation better for themselves, right? It's always like, what do you do? right? That's always the thing that we always ask players, right? To be like, insert yourself in a narrative and make those decisions, right? Or like, be heroic. We're always asking our players to be heroic all the time, right? What's more heroic than not yielding to a mob boss and defying like a very, very bad situation where like you really should just be kind of trying to keep yourself alive, right? Like you're at the mercy of like murderers, right? IRL at your mercy with murderers, you'd be like, nah, man, whatever you want. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do anything in the situation, right? But like players, it's like, nah, man, never give up, never surrender, right? Kind of tough guy attitude, which is cool. I mean, like John McClane wouldn't do that, and if John McClane wouldn't do that, I'm not gonna do that. I want to be John McClane. We're dieharding right now, like fuck.
What stands out to me, other than this being their first time, is that the DM was like afterwards saying that they liked the character and they were asking if the party could find a cleric to revive the character. And it's just sort of, to me, if the tone you're trying to strike is the sort of game where if you mouth off to the wrong person, you'll be super dead right away. I don't know that you would have clerics around to very easily revive a person. That seems contradictory to the tone, which seems to me, again, this is me projecting maybe, which seems to me like you wanted to undo the thing you did.
Yeah, it could be like just backtracking, and people make mistakes in the heat of the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like who knows like what, like this happens all the time. This actually happened, a good example in Matt Kova in one of his his running the game series. He talked about a game where like a session where one of his friends, there was tied up, literally the same thing, imprisoned, tied up by the bad guy, literally just like, at this person's mercy. And one player escaped, I guess, right, and caused trouble. And the other player was like, I guess, mouthing off and tried to escape or whatever, or do something. I think it was mouthing off, and then the bad guy decided that like these guys are too much trouble to keep alive and just killed him, right?
Yeah.
And like in that scenario, his solution, like the 2020 vision was like, I should have just like, just cut the scene to the person who escaped because they had like a plan to rescue everyone, right? If the camera isn't pointed there, then you don't have to deal with it, right? Just change the perspective. Go to that person who's trying to rescue them, or like cut to a different scene, or just move the story along, right? Just like don't let the players do something. If you don't want the players to do something stupid, then don't give them the opportunity to. Just right, you know what I mean? Like
that's fair.
Just move it along. The players would enjoy it. The players are gonna be like, can't wait to escape. And then you get captured, tied up, and just cut straight to like being in the jail cell. Like, don't give them the opportunity to talk to the mob boss and do anything stupid.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have the benefit of hindsight, the benefit of reading about it instead of being there, but like I in the moment I probably would have just gone with the restraint and then some sort of like significant injury to the player character, maybe something they would have to deal with.
I would have just beat him up to like knock them out. Like I would have definitely knocked him out to 0 HP, because obviously the players are going to escape in some sort of elaborate escape ruse, and if they get into a fight, being at 1 HP is like, I don't know about D&D, whatever, because D&D you could just be up and down or whatever, right? Like it doesn't matter, but it still like makes it harder for them, for sure, right? So you could have had them, you could have done like major bodily harm, like you could just be like removing an eye, or like now this person just lost their hand. That's like some significant stuff, right?
Yeah, like I don't know if I would
this person is that,
yeah,
like you could do, I mean it's bad. I mean I don't know what kind of game that the person's running, right? Like how much of like bodily harm you're really kind of explaining to your players, right? Like narrating, right? Or what people are comfortable with. Like maybe just saying like, oh yeah, they kill you, right? Just leave it like that. Like maybe that's the place where they like to play in. But there's tons of ways where like the GM could have just done something bad to the player, but still kept them in the game and not just and still show that the mob boss means business.
Yeah.
Right. It's like there's tons of ways to make bad guys be bad that isn't just straight murder.
Yeah.
Although straight murder is pretty effective.
It is, depending on what you want to do. But I mean, like, I guess it feels like that wasn't communicated. Additionally, like, I mean, again, we have the benefit of hindsight here. I don't want to call it this DM too much because all you have is this one story. I don't know what the rest of what they do.
Of course, this is totally just like for the learning, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Just like,
as a thing to learn from. But I don't know. It's just because I'm seeing like this mob boss is going to take these characters to cells or whatever. It seems like you're setting up for some sort of escape story. I don't know why you would go past unconsciousness.
Right. Like, why would you waste? You know what I mean? Like, why would you set something up just for your own decision making to be like, nah, forget it? You know what I mean? Like, you obviously thought ahead and you were planning this escape thing. But, sometimes people just get caught up in the moment, and it's just like, I want to show the players that I mean business. And then that's when, like, things go bad, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's why, like, an example of, like, making the bad guys are bad. Like, I had Mistress Sonata kill one of her own men because one of her own men ran away, and she's like, lol, you suck. Like, she's like, oh, if she's willing to kill her own men, she's super dangerous kind of trope, right?
Yeah, that establishes like the point you're trying to get across without it being killing a player.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And like, you guys end up fighting Mr. Sonata, and like, yeah, she's very strong.
Yeah, like we have that tone. We know she's serious before we go into this. Like, we don't have to see her stats. We don't have to see her level. We don't have to see what's her bonus to attack, what's her spell DC. We see she did this thing, so we know, like, we got to be careful. We need a plan to fight this person.
Yeah. Actually, arguably, it immediately, everyone was like, let's try really hard not to fight this lady. Everyone just stopped and was like, okay, hold on.
Exactly. we were being like trying to be stealthy when we first actually like got near her.
Right. So yeah, it was kind of weird that the DM was like, okay, maybe it could have been guilt, right? Sometimes you just do something, you're like, you regret it. You're like, oh shit, that was a bad move, and that's totally fine. Yeah,
that was the vibe I was getting from like looking for a cleric as a suggestion.
Yeah, and specifically, I think it was like weird for someone's first gaming experience. I know that like now I'm a little bit more like if a new player is playing the game, I want them to have the best. If there's a new player at my table, I want that person to have the best time possible so they are more likely to come back. It's not like I'm favoring them, but I want to show them the best moments of this hobby, right? So they can realize why I like it so much, right? So it's like if someone's new, I want to like make sure that they have a good time, so they're more likely to come back and enjoy it. Right? Not at the expense of everybody else at the table, no. But I'm not gonna kill their character, the very first character ever, and being like, well, that's how the game goes. That's not fun.
Yeah, no, like right? It's not even like it was a combat situation. Like, this was, because like I've had plenty of character deaths that were combat situations that I couldn't predict just because of like, oh, they went down from a crit or they failed their saves or whatever. Like, if it was that situation, I would understand. Like, that would still be maybe a bit frustrating depending on what the full situation was. But this was just like they were having their hero moment, and I guess because like it just seems like a tonal thing. It seems like they expected the tone of the game to be one where the hero could spit in the face of a villain. The villain says something, and then they get knocked out, and then they go to the prison, and then they have the prison escape story that was clearly being planned here. Not so much the tone where they do that, and then they die immediately.
Yeah, and then like the backtrack with, well, you can find a cleric to revive your character. I really liked him. I'm like, if you really like a character, keep him alive. Like, come on, what are you doing, Holmes?
I mean, I tried. That didn't work out, but
hey,
I stopped trying to keep characters alive. I realize it's totally out of my control if anyone lives or dies.
It's on, man. It's on them, and it's on the bad guys, right? You're not doing it. You're just trying to tell the story. It's not my fault. The bad guys are really strong. Fuck.
Yeah,
that's
what
like, they're bad.
A situation like this that seems like more of a scene than a combat. It just seems like a weird decision to make. But I understand. Like, maybe they got caught up in the moment. It seemed like the right thing at the time, and they were trying to find a way to fix it.
For sure.
But this being Twitter, people took it personally.
Always.
So one person, I'm trying to avoid like naming names because I don't want this to be that kind of like video. But they were saying that the person wasn't necessarily punished for role playing, but that their character did something, suicidal basically, and there were foreseeable consequences, and the player shouldn't expect to have plot armor. And some people were responding saying, well, that's a bad call because the player was coming in with a certain expectation of what the tone would be from other like films, TV, and other media, having an idea of how heroes act in the face of an antagonist rather. Like they could spit in the face of this antagonist and then see what happens from there. Like the character would still be alive but get roughed up a bit.
Right.
Which of course leads to some back and forth because people are saying, well, D&D is a storytelling game and that works as a story element, like spitting in the face of an antagonist. And some people were saying, no, it's a wargaming thing and there's an obvious consequence to messing with someone who's a very significant villain. Like there was a lot of pushback on the idea of an RPG game, a tabletop RPG game being a collaborative storytelling game, which I don't know. I mean, it sucks how personal it got. Some people were just like insulting each other back and forth, obviously because it's Twitter. But
yeah,
I couldn't really wrap my head around that idea. Like I guess it depends on the kind of game you want to run. The idea of a game that's just like your character doesn't matter, so like it's all just numbers on a piece of paper, and I guess people care more about the game part than the RP part, but it's just so foreign to me. I can't I get it in terms of this is what people might like, but I can't get it in terms of why, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, I mean, that's kind of like what the game was a little bit before when Gygax invented it, and Gygax and his friends are like, I mean, like that's where it came from. Like they were war gamers, right? They were like, we can make a game because we love playing these war games, but we want to just play heroes, right? And the game was Dungeons and Dragons because you went into dungeons and you fought dragons, right? It wasn't like princesses to be saved and valuable lessons to be learned and like what the true meaning of friendship was. Like fuck that, it's about money and killing things so you can get more money, so you can kill more things, right? It was a game, and and that's kind of where it started. And I would argue the game is still about that because most of the game is literally like killing dudes, taking their shit, selling it, getting more stuff so you could kill more dudes, right? That's still a core experience of Dungeons and Dragons, and or other tabletop RPGs with combat involved, right? But I think that the idea that it's just a war game, that it's just a tactical game with numbers and stats and shit like that, it's like, I think that's arguably wrong, because even in games, even in war games with like Warhammer or like bolt action or anything like that, there's still a narrative, right? You're still like, even if you're the Germans fighting the Poles or whatever, right? There's still a narrative there, even though you're a Blood Angel Space Marine fighting some Gene Stealers. It's like there's the notion of like you're either there's like that drama, right? It's always there, even if it's just a bunch of numbers and bodies, right? There's still drama, there's still goals, there's still antagonists and protagonists. You know what I mean? There's still reasons for the numbers and the people to exist and to try and murder each other, right? So just saying that like, it's a war game or whatever, or it's just stats, you shouldn't have done that because you should have just known better. I think that's ridiculous. And the fact that like, they're like, oh, it's not a role-playing game, and I was like, I think that's crazy, because every game you play as a human being is a role-playing story experience. Like, you might not think that, but like that is how it actually is, because there's no way for you to like storytelling is so integral to being human. You do it without thinking. Anytime you recant something, it's telling a story. Every time you learn something, it's telling a story. Anytime you think of a thought, you're telling yourself a story. Like, it is insane to me that someone's like, oh, there's no story in Dungeons and Dragons, or there's no role playing in Dungeons and Dragons. Everyone plays a role in their daily life, unless you're literally like a beep boop robot with numbers and zeros. And even if you're a beep boop robot with numbers and zeros, whoever made you was telling a story. like it is impossible. Time flows forward, therefore there is a beginning, middle, and end, and you are living a story right now. So that's my TED Talk. Thanks.
I mean, it is a phenomenal point. Like, you're not a literal elf. Whatever you do in this space, like, you're playing a role. So.
Even if you were just a sheet of paper with numbers, you're still playing. You're still like actively engaging in storytelling. It's nuts. But yeah, no, those people are just those people are just wrong. Although I will say that you should have a little bit of sensibility of your own mortality in these games, because these games are trying to mirror some sort of living, breathing world, right? Mm-hmm. Where there's consequences. I think it's like those people are trying to argue that obviously that was the logical outcome of that situation, right? To them, that is the only logical outcome to the situation, because the person was literally at the that character was at the bad guy's mercy. And not even that, he was the top bad guy in that situation. It's like, what else was gonna happen, right? To them, it's clear as day. But like, that is not the case. And there's tons of reasons to play tabletop RPGs. Some of them is like, you do want to get that number crunchiness. You do want to be that tactical role-playing person. You want to beat up all the bad guys with the biggest numbers, right? And there's other ways where you just want to reenact a scene in like a movie or something you watch, right? You want to be the hero. And I would argue that you can do both at the same time. And if there's multiple ways of doing it, I think it could have gone either way. I think it was perfectly fine that player was killed by the DM, right? I think that was perfectly fine. And I think it would also perfectly fine if that player was to survive and nothing bad happened to him, or something, they got maimed or something. Like, literally any outcome was perfectly fine as long as it was intentional.
Yeah.
Right?
If it was communicated,
right?
Like if it was, because what stands out to me so much is that this person thought this was strange because this was their first session, and they were asking these questions to sort of gauge, like, is this what normally happens in the game? Because it seemed to be weird and stand out to them, and I think they came in expecting heroic fantasy and got low-level, like, gritty
realism, right?
Yeah, gritty realism.
Yeah, they're like, I thought this was a Marvel film, but like, lol, it's Dark Knight. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, there were some people who were responding with, like, it was sort of like teaching the characters a lesson a bit, or you're not hero. That was one of the things that also stood out to me. Again, I'm not going to name the person specifically, but the you are not heroes lesson. But, like, that's what the person came in expecting. They came in expecting that was the sort of game they were going to be able to play.
That's how you're not heroes. Like, do you see the box cover? You're like literally fighting a dragon or whatever, and it's like, only heroes do that. You know what real people do? They're like, I don't know, just like beat up mobsters. Like, what do you? It's like, what?
I don't know, man. Look,
you're just like look at the cover of the book. Like, you're just literally like casting spells and stuff. Like, real people don't cast spells.
You dig deep enough on Twitter, you're gonna find some.
You're like a fantasy person. You have potions that can heal up wounds. Like, what do you mean you're not a hero in a fantasy RPG? This is literally what's on the box cover. Don't at me, man. Like,
I think it was more to be like, you're not going to be able to take on a whole like dungeon on your own or something like that. But like, that's not what they're asking for here. They just want to spit in the face of the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, the bad guy could have just like backhanded them and spit right back at them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the response, right? The response of like that NPC was kind of polarizing. I think specifically, like, I wouldn't do it for like unless I knew unless I spoke to the table before, like, listen, this is they will kill you, right? Like, it's like, this is the game I'm playing.
Yeah, right? Like, if you had said at that moment, are you sure you want to do this? Because there may be lethal consequences to it.
Yeah, right. Setting up those lethal consequences, like making sure that people know like death is always on the line. That death is always an option. Right? You can just be murdered for sure.
Yeah, because setting tone, like it's not just a first session or a session 0 thing. Like you have to do that continuously. You have to make it clear that people understand the consequences of like whatever choice they want to make. Because
for
like
sure.
like nothing's gonna turn someone away faster than like they make a choice but they don't know, they don't have a reasonable understanding of what the consequences might be. Like they don't have a reason to have known what would happen to them if they made a certain choice.
Yeah, for sure. And that disconnect, right, between like what a player is thinking and what a GM is thinking, or like even what the player is thinking, what the table's thinking, right? It's like that level of communication wasn't set up. So expectations were mistaken, and things were different. But to to those people who are like what's it? Dungeons and Dragons is just a monster fighting game, right? Versus like it's not a role playing game. I would argue that it's both, because there's two sections on the literal, like you have two stats, right? There's two ways you can interact with the world, specifically in Dungeons and Dragons. It's like your skills and your attack bonus, right? It's like there's no situation in narrative play where you typically roll for using your attack bonus, right? Or like other RPGs, you're like fighting number, right? You're hitting number. You barely use it in role-playing scenarios. And I would argue in the combat scenarios in most tabletop RPGs, you never really use the skills. Like most of the skills never come up. I know in some games like Pathfinder, they tried really hard to integrate like both sections of the sheet, right? There's lots of ways you can use your intelligence stats or like your acrobatic stat or whatever, involved within combat, right? But you still never use that combat attack bonus or whatever in a narrative setting. So it's like the game is just trying to do two things at once. And I think that like I would argue that you can do both at the same time, or one or the other, right? I just don't get it when people are like, no, it's only one way to play the game. And it's like, obviously the literal inventors are like, no, you can do both because here's the sheet.
Yeah.
like it's literally there. You can't even argue it. It's like we gave you two sections. You can use one or the other or both. I don't care. But I made it. Bonkers to me, man. Yeah. Bonkers.
I mean, yeah, there was some back and forth that I just found annoying. I don't know, the way people responded to someone saying that D&D should be like a collaborative storytelling platform. It was just weird to me.
Yeah. I mean, fuck. I mean, it is. Period.
like, how does a narrative not emerge as you play? Even the most blunt object kind of playing and GMing, how does a narrative not happen naturally? You don't know what's going to happen when you roll the die. Something's not going to happen to you.
Like, even if it's just like the bare bones dungeon crawl, right? It's like if like what's the fun in not having the bad guys have a little bit of agency? Like they live here or they're doing something here or something, and if they just why would it be like, why wouldn't even an alarm being raised is storytelling, right? You're transitioning from like you're now breaking into being like now everyone's looking for you, right? People are unaware but now they're aware, right? That changes every other combat scenario going forward, right? It's like even the choice of like which room to break in can matter, because let's say you break in a room that has a bunch of bad guys, but they have a way to alert other bad guys, and all of a sudden the situation, it accelerates, right? It's like all of a sudden things get exponentially more dangerous. What if you ran into the room with a very significant bad guy or the big bad guy while you're low on resources, right? Now instead of it being like an even fight, it's like a desperate situation, and all those things are arguably narrative storytelling beats, and you just did that from just dungeon crawling and the bare minimum of blunt force role playing. Like it is so, as a person who loves tactical combat, I would argue that is my foremost fun of playing these games is being able to do that. I still don't agree with those people. Like, I think they're ridiculous.
Yeah, no. I think the DM might have needed to communicate the consequences a bit clearer, and I think some people need to stop being so angry at Critical Role.
Yeah, those guys need to chill out. Like, Critical Role is not, stopping you from beating up goblins in a thing. I just think that, like, and like anybody else who's telling those people that they can't play D&D that way, you can shut up too. Like, everyone just needs to let people play the games that they want to play.
I mean, yeah, like, they can play that way. I don't get it, but I'm not gonna say like you shouldn't do it. I'm just gonna say, man, like, I don't understand you, but you do you, man.
Yeah, just peace and love, man. Like, we're just rolling plastic dice,
yeah,
and killing each other with numbers. Just chill out. It's not the end of the world.
Basically, yeah. I think that's about all. There were some other tweets I wanted to cover, but I don't know if we have time for them today. I think this is too much controversy for today.
Yeah, maybe we'll collect them and be like the Twitter bag of like hot takes on the internet.
The Angry Bird section of the show.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Oh man. We could certainly get into a whole discussion about politics and gaming, but let's not. Instead, let's go into the outro.
Yes.
Thanks a ton, everybody. Thanks a ton for listening. Had a lot of interesting topics this episode. I like doing into that recap. I hope people enjoyed it because I'm really excited to get into those stories. And I hope people were interested in hearing about these controversies. If you want to hear more about like certain topics, or if you just see like something interesting to you, you can send it to us on Twitter or Facebook, or email us, or send it through our website. We have a submission thing that I don't know why I put it there, because I have to keep worrying if some sort of spam bot's going to get through, so I got to keep making sure the filters are updated. So send me something actually useful there at winwithdice.ca, or check us out on Twitter at winwithdice. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get a notification when we put up a new podcast or when we go live. I think going forward, it's going to be Thursdays and Fridays for streams. Thursdays Outer Worlds, Fridays Skyrim. I want to play both. Mm-hmm. I want to play them like off stream. It's really frustrating when I can't. I think I might just like grind something in Skyrim, like smithing. I think maybe I'll grind that off screen.
Nice.
Because I want to like do arcane weapon stuff, but apparently I need to be better at smithing. So whatever, man. So if you
like a bunch of daggers.
If you want to see what I did last stream where I had to go to prison and then had to break out and I might have ruined Markarth, go check that out. Or if you want to see the drama in the Outer Worlds stream, check that out too. I had a lot of good snipes in that stream, so if you want to see me pretend to be good at a video game that's set to easy, go there.
Pro gamer move, dog.
The only pro gamer moves to play on easy. Also, shout out to Shaka's Field Guide to Unfokane, a setting that you can put into your Lancer game. If you go check that out, you can get a book on the setting. It's a very interesting and detailed setting, and it also comes with some LCP files you can upload to your CompCon. So you get all sorts of cool new mech parts for your Lancer games. Speaking of Lancer, don't forget to check out Celeste's Lancer RPG NPC guides, which are sort of guides to how a Lancer GM can use different types of NPCs together or separately or as large squads of themselves, and some narratives that sort of focus on those NPC types. Also, shout out to the Untold Stories Project, where I'm there on Mondays usually, playing Mutants and Masterminds. We did have to take a break this week because some people weren't feeling well, and I'm not gonna lie, I was super tired because the Sunday before, I had randomly been invited by Alex onto a Green Ronin stream because they were playing some Mutants and Masterminds with some people from their Patreon. He kind of messaged me and it was like, hey, do you want to play Mutants and Masterminds tonight? And I was like, sure, when? In 10 minutes. I was like, okay. But I can't turn down that game. It was really fun. I had a blast with it. I'll link it below because I had a lot of fun playing with those guys. And one person was playing Daedalus, who was sort of like this ancient Greek Iron Man. And
Ooh, cool.
oh my god, that guy was brilliant. I will link it so you can see him specifically. It was really fun. And I think that's about it for our shoutouts.
Yes, nice.
Oh wait, I got some French wrong in that video, so if you watch it, don't blame me. I'm just letting you know that. It's a long story.
Nice.
Then that's it for the outro. I don't know, Ramon, anything else you want to say before we hand off?
No, I think we're good, man.
In that case, I just want to let everybody out there to know it's getting cold out, so, be sure to dress warm. And while you're doing that, make sure to remember to keep on winning with dice. And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.